"You're the biggest disappointment," Mom said to everyone as she poured her wine. Then my sister's officer stood up and saluted. "Good afternoon, SEAL Commander Cross." My parents' jaws dropped. They were ashamed. "My name is Elena Cross, 32 years old, birthplace North Carolina. Occupation, classified." At least, that's what my personnel file used to say. To my family, I was a dropout, a disgrace, a question mark. But I've worn uniforms no one's allowed to photograph, walked through fire in countries that don't officially exist, and carried out missions that could never be written down. I've disappeared for so long I forgot what it felt like to be seen, until now. When I stepped through the front door, the silence hit me like a wave. No balloons, no hugs, no welcome home banner stretched across the living room. Just the slow, deliberate tap of my mother's nails on her phone screen as she scrolled through Facebook posts. She looked up at me like I was a telemarketer interrupting her evening. "You made it," she said flatly, not even pausing her scroll. Her eyes flicked back to her screen where I glimpsed a photo of my younger sister Claire in her dress whites, laughing in her fiancé's arms. My father stood by the hallway, arms crossed. His gaze swept over me as if trying to decide whether to shake my hand or offer me a guest towel. "Flight? Okay," he asked, voice stiff with formality. "It was fine," I said suddenly, aware of the duffel bag slung over my shoulder, the wear in my boots, the way my jeans didn't quite fit the suburban mold. I'd been gone for 7 years, not on vacation, not to find myself as they like to tell people, but to serve quietly, invisibly. But to them, I was still the one who quit the Navy before she even began. The disappointment. The one who walked away from a perfectly good Naval Academy appointment. Claire, of course, had taken the path they understood. She was the golden child now, military through and through just like Dad. I walked down the hallway to what used to be my room. I stopped at the doorway. My bed was gone. In its place were boxes labeled "Wedding" in Sharpie. Rolls of white tulle and gold ribbons spilled out like a bridal avalanche. The closet door was open, packed with sample dresses and a mannequin wearing what I assumed was Claire's second or third gown. "We thought you'd stay in the garage," Mom called from the kitchen as if reading my mind. "Claire needed the space. You understand?" I didn't answer. I just turned and walked out to the garage. The air was colder, sharper, and smelled faintly of motor oil. A cot had been set up in the corner next to the lawnmower. There was a single blanket folded neatly military tight. Irony, I suppose. That night, I lay there listening through the thin garage wall as my parents laughed and talked about Claire and her fiancé Daniel. "He's Army intelligence," Mom said. Like that explained everything. "He's so stable, so respectful." "He'll make a great leader," Dad added. Claire made a smart choice. Not like silence. But I knew how that sentence ended. Not like me. Respectful meant he followed the path they expected. Stable meant he could be measured by their yardstick. And great leader. That one used to sting. Used to. They didn't know the missions I'd led, the lives I carried on my shoulders, the nights I woke up in a sweat seeing coordinates flash behind my eyelids. I wasn't just forgotten, I had been erased. That night, I stared at the ceiling, a patch of insulation stained from a leak that probably no one had bothered fixing. And I thought about the last time I stood in a room like this with a recruiter saying, "No one will ever know what you did, not even your family." Can you live with that? At 18, I said yes. At 32, I wasn't so sure. But this much, I knew something was shifting. Maybe it was the way Claire's photos smiled from every surface. Or the way my name wasn't spoken once all evening, or the way my mother couldn't even pause to look at me. I wasn't looking for a parade. I had never been. But after everything, this felt hollow, like a chair pulled out from under you while you're still trying to sit down. A ghost doesn't get a welcome home. But I wasn't a ghost. Not anymore. Not for long. I wasn't always invisible. There was a time when I filled space in this house, not just physically, but in the way my father used to clap me on the back after I won a swim meet, or how my mother once folded my ROTC uniform like it was something sacred. Back then, I was the firstborn, the strong one. They bet their legacy on. And for a while, I tried to be exactly what they needed until I couldn't anymore. It started before the letter from the Naval Academy. It started in quiet moments on long runs where I couldn't feel my legs anymore, but something deeper burned in my chest, a whisper I couldn't name yet. I was 17, and I already knew I didn't want to follow someone else's map to someone else's life. But I didn't know how to say that in this house, not when Dad still polished his metals like a daily ritual, and Mom ironed respectability into every meal we ate. The night the letter came, Dad opened it like he was unfolding a contract with fate. "They want you," he said, trying not to smile too hard. "You made it, made what I wanted to ask. Into a uniform, into a life scripted in medals and obedience." My mother kissed my forehead and called me our legacy. I wanted to be proud. Instead, I felt a weight settle on my shoulders like a too heavy rucksack. I waited 2 days before I told them. "I'm not going," I said quietly as they sat around the kitchen table. I remember every detail, the steam from Dad's coffee, the way Mom's fork paused midair, Claire's eyes shifting from me to them like she was watching a house catch fire in slow motion. "You're not going," Dad repeated. His voice wasn't angry. Not yet, just confused, like I'd misread the question on a test. Mom blinked. "What are you saying? Eleanor, you're declining." I nodded. "I've been offered something else, a different program, a civilian program," Dad asked, his voice sharpening. "No, military. Just off record." That's when Claire spoke, still chewing. "Not everyone's built for pressure, Ellie." She didn't mean it cruelly. That's the part that hurt most. She meant it as truth, as something she'd come to believe about me, the older sister, but somehow lesser. That night I didn't cry, not when Dad told me I was throwing away my future, not when Mom said, "This isn't the girl I raised." I packed my bag in silence, knowing the version of me they wanted was a mannequin in their image. I was already gone, they just didn't know it yet. They told people I went to Europe to find myself. A cousin once asked if I was backpacking in Thailand. I let the rumors grow like moss over the truth because the truth was unspeakable, not just for national security, but because I knew they wouldn't want it. My story didn't come with medals or military banquets or Facebook posts. Instead, my story came with ink-black helicopters, cold briefings, and missions where failure didn't mean dishonor. It meant body bags. In this house, value was measured in visible things: diplomas, ranks, polished shoes at Sunday brunch. Claire had all of that, and she wore it beautifully. Dad once called her the better version of both of us. I smiled when he said it, but something in me recoiled. In a family that measured worth by what could be framed or pinned to a lapel, I was the blank space in the gallery wall. After my first deployment, one that left shrapnel in a place I can't name, and a scar across my hip, I came home on a 72-hour leave. I didn't even make it to the front door. I stood outside in the rain watching through the window as they celebrated Claire's ROTC commission. The house was filled with people, laughter, pride. Her first uniform hung proudly on the wall like a painting. I turned around and got back on the train. I told myself I didn't care, that my life was bigger than this house, bigger than their narrow definitions. But the truth is, even ghosts crave being seen. That's what made coming back this time feel different. Not because I needed them to apologize, but because something inside me, something tired and unspoken, wanted to be real again, even if just for a moment. Maybe it was naive. Maybe I hoped that time had softened their corners, that the little girl who once saluted her father before bedtime might still mean something to them. But seeing Claire's wedding dresses in my old closet and hearing my mother assign me the garage like I was a seasonal guest told me everything I needed to know. They hadn't just forgotten me, they'd replaced me, and I had let them, but not anymore, not for long. I still remember the first time they asked me if I could disappear, not metaphorically, literally. The man across from me wore a standard issue suit, but the way he sat back, straight eyes, still told me he wasn't anyone's HR rep. We were in a windowless room at a federal annex just outside Arlington, and I was 17 years and 11 months old. He didn't ask about my grades. He didn't care about my SATs. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You were recommended. You passed the physical, the psych eval, and the moral stresses. If you say yes, you'll cease to exist in every official system that matters. No record, no rank, no name. You won't wear the trident. You won't even wear your own face. Are you in?" I said yes before he even finished. The next 3 years were spent erasing everything I thought I knew about strength, about limits. Badass was hard. This was something else entirely. We trained in shadow. Not at Coronado, but a site somewhere in the desert where GPS signals went to die. We were 6 women in a program that officially didn't exist. They didn't call us warriors. They didn't call us anything. We weren't supposed to survive. That was the point. They pushed us past exhaustion, then told us we were only halfway done. We trained in full gear underwater, our wrists zip-tied behind our backs, breath held on instinct and faith. We learned how to kill without sound, to lie without blinking, to watch each other bleed without flinching. We were a ghost unit, codename Viper Zero. Some nights, I lay on the concrete floor of our barracks, back spasming, muscles locked, listening to one of the girls, Miller, mutter the names of her brothers like a prayer. She was from Wisconsin. She had a tattoo of a broken arrow behind her ear. One day she didn't come back from a night drill. We were told it was heat stroke. Nobody, no memorial, just a blank bunk and the scent of eucalyptus still clinging to her towel. We didn't ask questions. That was part of the training too. They wanted to see what kind of woman would keep running toward fire even after she watched her sister die in it. And the answer was all of us. Every last one. I was 21 when I made my first kill. 22 when I amputated a teammate's leg with a field knife while under mortar fire. 24 was when I stopped writing letters home altogether. I'd started them at first drafts I never sent. "Hi Mom, tell Dad I'm okay. Claire, you'd laugh at what I ate today," but eventually it felt dishonest. Pretending to still exist in their world while living in one so far removed, it may as well have been Mars. So I let them bury me in their minds, the dropout, the runaway. It was easier than trying to explain that I was alive but couldn't prove it, that I was serving but could never be thanked. Sometimes I wonder if my mother ever looked up from her phone and thought about me. If she ever stared too long at an empty chair and thought maybe I'd sit there again someday. Other times, I hope she didn't. Because the life I chose, the missions I led, the bodies I left behind, the lines I crossed, for reasons that felt justifiable, at the time they don't fit neatly into a family scrapbook. I had to become a myth to survive. I had to let go of birthdays, of holiday dinners, of the girl who once thought respect came from medals and handshakes. Now I knew better. Respect was when your name never got spoken, but your team made it home. Honor was when your body screamed to stop, but you didn't. Because someone else's life depended on you pushing 1 second longer, I wasn't permitted to fail. And I wasn't permitted to exist. That was the price, and I paid it in full. The last time I looked in a mirror during that training year, I didn't recognize myself, not because I looked different, but because I finally saw what I was becoming. A weapon, a ghost, a soldier whose victories would never be counted. But even ghosts someday return to the places that made them. Not to haunt, to remind the living they never disappeared. The engagement party was held at the local officers' club, a place where brass gleamed and egos floated like champagne bubbles. The parking lot was already packed when I arrived. I parked 2 blocks away and walked in the late afternoon sun, slicing through my blouse, catching the faint outlines of scars I no longer tried to hide. The building pulsed with celebration. Laughter spilled out from the patio. Someone was playing a Sinatra playlist through the speaker system. I stepped inside, and the temperature dropped not just physically but emotionally. Every eye that landed on me slid off seconds later, uninterested, uncurious. I wasn't in uniform. I wasn't on the guest list anyone was proud of. I was just a shadow that had wandered into a room of light. I found a spot near the catering table and stuck to it. A glass of water in my hand, a smile faintly sketched on my lips, the kind you wear when your entire existence is conditional. Claire stood in the center of it, all resplendent in her navy dress, white hair tied back in a tight bun, medals displayed like polished credentials. She wasn't just glowing, she was canonized. Daniel, her fiancé, matched her presence perfectly. Army intelligence, crisp uniform, perfectly shined shoes. They looked like a recruitment poster, too flawless to be real. My mother hovered near them, directing conversations like an orchestra conductor. Yes. Daniel's being considered for a post at the Pentagon, she said proudly to one of the guests sipping rose. A real officer, solid, steady, someone who understands duty, Someone who sends people like me into places that don't exist, then forgets to count them when they come back missing fingers. A real officer. My father chimed in with a chuckle. Claire always knew how to choose. Didn't waste time with confusion like some people do. I didn't flinch, not even a twitch. But I did catch the way an older Navy man standing beside him raised an eyebrow as if curious whether I'd respond. I didn't. That's the thing about ghosts. We don't interrupt the living. I kept to the edge of the room watching as people congratulated Claire, toasted to Daniel, and complimented my mother on raising such a strong daughter. No one asked me who I was. No one offered a drink or even a second glance. I had saved lives for people like this, dragged broken bodies across sand while gunfire stitched the air behind us. And now, I stood beside a stack of mini crab cakes as invisible as the security clearance that had dictated every breath of my 20s. I used to think silence was noble, that fading into the background was the price of honor. But tonight, it just felt like suffocation with a polite smile. I caught a glimpse of myself in a silver serving tray, my hair tucked back, dark circles under my eyes, shoulders sloped slightly as if the room itself pressed against me. A man brushed past and said, "Excuse me, ma'am," without looking up. I laughed quietly to myself. "Ma'am? If only he knew." Claire raised her champagne glass to make a toast. "To family," she said, eyes wet with performative emotion. "And to service. May we never take for granted the sacrifices made in silence." She didn't look at me when she said it, but something in her voice told me she knew I was there, and that hurt worse than being forgotten, being remembered only when convenient. I clapped with the rest of them. 1, 2, 3, then took another sip of water, the ice having melted long ago. That's when it hit me, not the rejection, not the isolation, but the realization that I had been trained to disappear in places more dangerous than this. And yet this room felt more lethal. Because here, I wasn't unknown. I was unacknowledged. That's worse. That's erasure with a smile. I finished my drink, placed the empty glass gently on a tray, and turned to leave. As I walked out, no one followed me with their eyes, not even Claire. And that was the point. I was never supposed to be part of this picture, not in the dress code, not in the narrative, not in the story they told themselves about what service looked like. But one day, when the gloss fades and the medals tarnish, someone will ask where I was. And maybe then someone will say, not at the party but in the fight, in the silence, in the shadows where the real war was. I was just about to step out into the parking lot when the air inside shifted heavy electric like the seconds before a storm breaks. Laughter evaporated mid-syllable. Forks paused halfway to mouths. And then from the door, a voice cut through the quiet, "Permission to enter, Mom." I turned slowly because I knew that voice. Even after all these years, even through the chaos of countries we'd never claim and missions no obituary would ever mention, Lieutenant Colonel Eduardo Ramirez stood there like a verdict made flesh, uniform crisp ribbons gleaming like polished secrets. His eyes scanned the room with surgical precision. When they locked onto mine, they didn't waver. He walked forward, not fast, not slow, just deliberate. Like every step carried weight that couldn't be measured in rank. Claire saw him first. Her posture straightened out of instinct, but her smile faltered. Daniel stepped forward, slightly hand out as if to greet him, but Ramirez didn't break stride. He walked past the decorated guests, past the proud parents until he stood directly in front of me. And then he saluted, not casually, not like a nod to someone once respected, no. This was regulation sharp, arm at a perfect angle, fingers stiff with reverence. His voice when it came was low, but clear enough to pierce every corner of that chandelier-lit room. "Commander, one word." That's all it took. Claire's champagne flute slipped from her fingers and shattered against the floor, a sharp punctuation in the stunned quiet. My mother's gasp was audible, brittle. My father froze, his mouth slightly open like a man watching a magic trick whose mechanics he couldn't decipher. Every uniformed guest shifted subtly, processing a new reality they hadn't been briefed on. And me, I didn't blink. I didn't smile, I didn't correct or explain, I just nodded. A slow, controlled tilt of my chin, the kind of silent reply only someone like Ramirez would recognize for what it was. Respect returned. Truth acknowledged, no words necessary. That nod wasn't for my family. It wasn't even for the crowd. It was for the desert outside Mosul. For the night, we both thought we'd die in silence 20 feet apart, watching each other's blood paint the sand. For the girl he carried after she took a bullet meant for me. For the promises we never said aloud because they were coded into our bones. Ramirez held the salute a heartbeat longer, then lowered his hand, straightened his jacket, and without so much as a second glance, walked across the room and took a seat near the back. As if he hadn't just rewritten my entire mythology with a single gesture, the room tried to breathe again, but it was shallow. My mother clutched her wine glass as if it might stabilize her world. My father cleared his throat once, twice, but found no words. Claire. Claire looked at me like she'd never seen me before, not with rivalry, not with anger, but with something almost like fear. Daniel leaned in to whisper something to her, but she didn't hear him. Her eyes were still on me, on the woman she thought had quit, disappeared, failed. I used to imagine confronting them, explaining myself, proving my worth in court-like speeches. But I never pictured this, never imagined the universe would send a man like Ramirez to do it for me. One salute did what years of silence never could. It made me real again. Someone near the buffet tried to restart the music. Sinatra's voice warbled back to life, but the magic had shifted. The room didn't return to normal. It recalibrated like a compass, reluctantly pointing north after years of deflection. I walked to the edge of the patio, letting the late sunlight touch my face. Behind me, I heard my father finally murmur "Commander," as if tasting the word for the first time. Inside, I imagined Claire crouching to pick up shards of her broken glass. Fitting, really. She'd spent her life being the reflection of what everyone thought I'd lost. And now the pieces were hers to gather. I finished the water in my glass and set it gently on the stone ledge. Somewhere in the distance, Ramirez was already driving away the engine of his black sedan, a low, steady I didn't follow. Didn't need to. Some truths don't need witnesses. Just timing. As I stepped away from the patio, I caught my reflection in the glass door. For the first time in years, I didn't see a ghost, I saw a reckoning. And for tonight, that was enough. The quiet that followed didn't last long. 3 days after the engagement party, just as the dust of Ramirez's salute had begun to settle, just as Claire resumed smiling like nothing had cracked beneath the surface, my encrypted phone buzzed. A notification I hadn't seen in over a decade. Unauthorized access detected, Operation Storm, VOW, Tier 1 breach. I froze. That mission wasn't just classified. It was buried beneath layers of denial, beneath firewall after firewall of deniability. Only 6 of us had ever known the full scope, and 3 had died. My thumb hovered above the screen, a location ping followed. Fort Winfield, Era 742 internal access. That was Claire's base. My sister had tripped a wire that could bring down everything. I drove 2 hours without music, just the low of the tires on the asphalt and the thudding in my chest. Claire lived in a neat off-base apartment, succulent on the windowsill, folded flag on the bookshelf, and 3 versions of her thesis taped to the fridge with color-coded annotations. She opened the door in her PT gear, hair damp from a shower, startled to see me. "Ellie," she said, blinking. "Did I miss a call or we need to talk?" I said. Inside, the kitchen table was covered in printouts, some bearing military insignia. I recognized others marked redacted. I scanned the documents. One folder was open but frozen mid-download, bearing a name she shouldn't have seen. Stormvow. She saw where I was looking. "I didn't mean to," she said quickly, voice dropping to a whisper. "I was researching for my thesis, Women in Covert Operations." I clicked a link from a declassified forum, and it asked for credentials. I thought it was a test module, but then it opened just for a few seconds. Then it locked. I swear. Her hands trembled, not in fear of me, but of the machine she'd unknowingly poked. I sat down, heart still hammering, trying to slow my breathing. "Claire, you accessed something that doesn't officially exist, and now the system thinks you're a leak." "I didn't read anything," she insisted. "I only saw code names. One said Viper 0, the others were numbers. But Ellie," her voice cracked, "I think one of them was you." I didn't answer, didn't nod, didn't confirm. I just looked at her. And for the first time I really looked. The girl who once called me weak now sat across from me with panic in her eyes, but not because she'd messed up. because she finally understood the weight of what I'd carried. This isn't about your thesis anymore, I said. That breach triggered an internal review. They'll want to know how you found it, why you accessed it, and who told you. They'll dig into both of us. Are they coming after you? She asked. After me, no, I said grimly. They'll pretend I don't exist. But you're on the record. You're visible, and visibility makes you a threat. She sat down slowly, like the realization had weight. So what happens now? Now, I said, we make sure they don't erase what matters. They, she whispered. Who are they? I leaned forward, voice low. The people who made sure Stormvow would never see daylight. The ones who fear what happens if women like me, like us, are proven indispensable. They don't mind stories of bravery as long as they're the right kind of brave, the right kind of meat. Claire didn't answer. She just stared at the folder, the one that had flickered open like a door half ajar. I didn't mean to find you, she said softly, but I'm glad I did. My throat tightened. I hadn't expected that. Not from her, not now. You always thought I was the quiet one, I said. But that silence, it wasn't peace. It was exile. Then let me help bring you back, she said. Her voice wasn't trembling anymore, and in that moment I saw something new in her. Not pity, not guilt, but a readiness, a shift, the kind of spark that lit a match in the dark. I didn't say thank you. That wasn't how we worked. Instead, I reached across the table and closed the laptop. No more clicks, no more accidents. From now on, everything we do is deliberate. Are we in trouble? She asked. Oh, I said, cracking a faint smile. We're way past trouble. Oh, I said, cracking a faint smile. We're way past trouble. And suddenly, I was there again. Syria. The air was thick with sand and consequence. Mission code name Stormvow. No official coordinates to no country acknowledged. Just heat, sweat, and the echo of breathing through suppressed panic. We were 6, women whose files didn't exist. Our task: hold a strategic checkpoint at the edge of a village outside Hasaka. Intelligence said it would be quiet. Intelligence lied. Day 1, we dug into crumbling stone and broken clay, turning half-buried ruins into cover. Ramirez was the only outside contact, our ghost handler. He told us to hold 12 days until exfil. Supplies would come late, ammunition would be rationed, medics were optional, our names never spoken, not even among ourselves. Just call signs, Viper 1 through 6. I was 0, the one who'd answer for them all if we failed. We weren't trained for comfort, we were trained for silent starvation and making choices no one else could. On day 4 they came, not an army, not uniforms, just trucks with canvas flapping like ripped flags filled with men who didn't speak, but whistled when they saw us. Stand your ground, I whispered through the comms, but my voice was already drowned in adrenaline. The firefight began with smoke and oily curtain thrown over the sun. We held our position for 4 hours, lost 2 of our outer walls. Miller took shrapnel to the calf but didn't scream, just hissed, keep firing. On day 6, they breached, not through force, but deception, posing as civilians asking for water. Sanchez was on watch. She hesitated. They grabbed her, dragged her beyond the perimeter before anyone could fire. What followed wasn't protocol, it was instinct. I didn't radio. I didn't plan. I ran into open ground, into gunfire, into the kind of decision that would have gotten me court-martialed if I had a rank to begin with. I tackled the one holding Sanchez and drove my knife under his ribs before I knew my hand had moved. She was bloodied, but breathing. When we got back behind the line, I didn't speak, just reset my rifle and kept watch. That night, they bombarded us, mortars relentless. Dirt became shrapnel, air became fire, my ears bled from the concussions. I saw a wall collapse on Keen and used my bare hands to dig her out, nails, splitting skin flayed from rubble. By day 9, we were hallucinating from sleep deprivation. I caught Ramirez on the comm once, voice tight. You're not just holding a checkpoint, you're holding a truth they're scared will leak. Hang on. On day 11, our ammo was down to knives and fists. We moved like phantoms, one girl baiting the others, ambushing. Guerrilla defense at its most feral. We stopped counting kills, stopped checking watches, just breathed and fought and breathed again. On the 12th day, the pickup came at dawn. A single bird, unmarked silent rotors dipped low and hovered like judgment. Ramirez waved us aboard himself. I looked back once. The village was ash but still ours. We had held. 6 came in, 4 came out, Sanchez and Keene made it. Miller didn't. Her body never recovered. No medal, no name, just a dog tag we left behind in the dirt under a stone she'd once used for shade. Later, they told us Stormvow never happened, that the village was destroyed by local insurgents, that no U.S. presence had been confirmed in that region. We were debriefed in silence, warned, threatened, promised deniability in exchange for existence. I remember standing in the shadow of the Pentagon, uniformless, and thinking, this is the price. Not the blood, not the pain, the erasure, the silence after the storm. But I didn't lead those women for a medal. I didn't pull Sanchez out of fire for applause. I led like tomorrow didn't exist because for us, it didn't. We were not meant to be remembered. We were meant to win quietly, and we did. That's what Stormvow was. Not a mission, a vow. That even if the world didn't see us, we would see each other. That survival was resistance. And our existence, however, hidden, was proof that power doesn't always need to speak to be felt. But apparently, silence only works until it threatens the wrong kind of people. Less than 48 hours after Claire's breach, she was pulled from active duty. No explanation. Just a terse email stamped pending investigation. Her keycard stopped working the next day. She called me from the parking lot, voice hollow. They didn't even let me clean out my desk. I didn't say much because I was already moving, already shifting into the mode I thought I'd buried, the one that saw threats like chess pieces and turned corridors into strategy boards. I knew this wouldn't stay quiet. Not after what she accessed. Not with my name buried in the lines of that operation. I called in a favor, one I never thought I'd use from a former military JAG officer turned private counsel. Erin Kwan. The last time we spoke, she was getting heat for defending a whistleblower out of Ramstein. When she answered my call, she didn't ask questions, just gave me an address. We met in the back room of a bookstore that sold more vinyl than books. She closed the door and said, "Tell me everything fast." I laid it out. Stormvow, the girls, the 12 days, Claire's accidental access, the alert, the silence that followed. Erin didn't flinch, didn't blink. She just said, "They're going to bury this." I nodded. "Unless we exhume it first." She exhaled. "Do you know how many active non-disclosure protocols you're violating by sitting here?" "All of them," I said. But that didn't stop them from using my sister as a pretext. She tripped a wire that wasn't even supposed to be live. Erin leaned back. "They're not after her. They're cleaning house. If they can pin a breach on her, they'll retroactively discredit any connection she made, including to Stormvow. They want to erase it," I said. "Not because it failed, but because it worked." She tapped her pen once hard. "That's what scares them. You won." With no oversight, no chain of command, no mouse superior to credit. Just 6 women with nothing but instinct, grit, and deniability. I looked at her. She froze for a second, then nodded. "You should say that out loud under oath." That was the first time the word hearing entered the room, not whispered, stated. I'd avoided courtrooms my entire career. My existence relied on secrecy, but maybe secrecy had done enough damage. Erin gave me a file. "If we do this, it's public. You'll be asked to confirm things that were never supposed to exist." I ran my hand over the folder. "They buried us," I said, "but they didn't know we were seeds." The next day, Claire's official suspension arrived in print. No explanation, just operational security concerns. Her commanding officer didn't return her call. Her fiancé told her to let it blow over. She didn't. She sat in my car silent, then said, "I'm testifying too." I turned to her. "You don't have to. They're targeting me, not you." Her voice was flat. "They only came after me because I got too close to you. If I back off now, they win twice." I saw it then that she wasn't just scared. She was angry, not for herself, for me, for what had been done in her name, for what she dismissed when I first said no to the academy. We drove to D.C. the next morning. Erin met us with briefing papers and a suit that didn't belong to me. "You need to look like someone they regret underestimating," she said. I put it on. It didn't fit like my combat gear. It fit like armor made for a different kind of war. In the mirror, I didn't see a ghost. I saw a witness. The hearing was scheduled in a closed session, classified clearance only. Claire wasn't allowed inside, but she waited outside, hands folded, spine straight. I walked past her and whispered, "This is for all 6. Inside the room felt colder than any base I'd ever deployed from. Men in suits, one woman. All eyes were waiting for me to stumble. I didn't. I raised my right hand, swore to tell the truth. And then I did, quietly, sharply, deliberately. I described the terrain outside Osaka, the way Miller's blood dried on my sleeve, the screams Sanchez swallowed to keep us hidden. I described leadership without rank, courage without cameras, victory without witnesses. When it was done, I reached into my bag and pulled out something they didn't expect: a single photograph. Grainy. From a body cam not supposed to exist. In it, 6 women crouched behind rubble eyes, sharp dirt streaked but alive. On the chest of one a patch, Viper 0. Erin spoke next. She read from a declassified memo quietly leaked showing that a superior had scrubbed post-mission commendations for operational optics. She read it twice. The room didn't move. I walked out without waiting for their verdict because I knew something had shifted. For the first time, I wasn't asking to be believed. I was demanding to be remembered. 2 days later, I put on the uniform they told me never to wear. No insignia, no name tag. But the cut was unmistakable. Navy issue, SEAL, trim. The kind that belonged to men until now. I stood in front of the mirror and straightened the jacket. It still smelled like sand and diesel and blood. My own, someone else's. I stopped trying to remember which. Claire stood behind me silent, watching. Then she reached into the garment bag she'd brought. "You forgot this," she said. I turned. She was holding a patch, Viper 0. Hand-stitched, weathered, mine. My throat tightened. I hadn't seen it in a decade. I pinned it to my inner lining. Not for them, for me, for her. The hearing room was packed this time. No more closed session. A congressional subcommittee had picked up our case. Media whispers, quiet, sanitized, alleged gender bias and covert operations. They didn't know what they were about to hear. I walked in head high. The weight of every unsaid story trails behind me like a phantom battalion. Ramirez was seated near the back. Erin Kwan is to my right. Claire beside her in dress whites, suspended, but not silenced. The committee chair, a gray-haired man, who'd probably never fired a rifle outside training, looked up. "Commander Cross, you may proceed. I'm not here to beg, I'm here to break the silence." I activated the tablet on the podium and tapped the first video. Grainy infrared, taken from a drone, unauthorized, likely leaked through someone who'd risked court-martial for truth. It showed us 6 shadows in sand ducking fire flanking a convoy. At the center of the frame, one figure dove over an IED just before it detonated. Helmet off. Face turned, a woman. Gasps rippled. Not at the explosion, but at the unmistakable presence of a Navy SEAL helmet on a head no one expected. "That footage," I said, voice clear, "was never meant to be seen because it was never supposed to exist because we were never supposed to exist." They didn't interrupt, maybe they couldn't. I played the second clip. Body cam, my own. Static laced but sound intact. Miller's voice, "0. We're out of ammo." Mine. "Then we go silent. Move." In the frame, my hand lifting Sanchez over my shoulder, blood soaking through both our sleeves. I let it play to the end where we stood at the extraction point, arms linked, exhausted, but upright. No one saluted, no one cheered, we just survived. That was the ceremony. I looked up. "You erased us because we didn't fit the story you liked. The one with strong men, folded flags and wives holding babies at home. But that's not the only war being fought, and it's not the only one worth remembering." The chairman adjusted his mic. "Commander, are you stating that this mission was sanctioned without oversight?" "No," I said. "I'm stating that it was one without oversight, and that's what scares you." Someone cleared their throat behind me. "Claire, I'd like to be heard," she said. Whispers surged. She wasn't on the schedule. "I'm Lieutenant Claire Cross," she continued, "and I accessed that file by accident." But what I found was the truth my sister never tried to make me understand because she wasn't allowed to. We wear the same uniform, but I never carried what she did, not until now. I stand here today, not just for her, but for every woman who was told not yet or not you. She looked at me. Ellie didn't just serve, she led quietly, relentlessly. She doesn't need this committee to validate her, but I think this country does. There was no applause, just stillness. One of the younger aides stood, eyes fixed on the paused frame. Me crouched in dust, arm around Miller. He said nothing, but he saluted. That was enough. I didn't come back for justice. That's too clean. I came back for the record. So that when history tries to forget us again, someone somewhere will say she was there. She led, she bled, she won. I stepped back from the mic, left the helmet on the desk, let them try to look away, but they didn't. Not this time. 3 days later, a nondescript government envelope arrived at my door. No return address, no insignia. Just my name typed in precise font that betrayed no emotion, Eleanor Cross. Inside, a single sheet of paper with a Navy Department letterhead, and one line, recognition of service requested, attend in uniform. Underneath it, a time, a date, a location I knew well, Naval Heritage Center, Washington, D.C. For years I had been told I didn't exist, that my actions had no record, that my mission had no name. Now they were asking me to show up in the skin they once denied me. The uniform I chose wasn't standard issue. The fabric had been altered, tailored to move like armor. No rank on the collar, no badge above my heart, just a single silver pin, an unspoken nod to those who knew what it meant. I stood before the mirror that morning, buttoning each layer with deliberate stillness, like building a second self. Not the daughter who failed, not the soldier who vanished, but the woman who returned. When I arrived at the hall, it was almost empty. Just a few aides arranging chairs, a military chaplain double-checking a podium, and at the center, what drew every breath from my lungs, a wooden plaque draped in velvet. I knew what it was before they unveiled it. I just didn't know how it would feel to see my name on it. The room filled slowly. Naval officers, Pentagon staffers, historians with pens but no cameras. And near the back, almost hidden by a marble pillar, was Claire. No uniform, just a navy blue coat and a look I couldn't quite name. Maybe guilt, maybe pride, maybe both. The admiral who stepped forward to speak was old enough to remember when women weren't even allowed on combat ships. His voice was dry but steady. There are stories the Navy has chosen not to tell, he began. Not out of shame but out of design, for security, for protection, for control. But some missions refuse to stay buried, and some warriors, he paused, eyes scanning the room until they met mine, refused to remain invisible. Then he gestured to the plaque, a slow, deliberate pull of velvet. 6 names. No last names, no ranks, just call signs. Viper 1, Viper 2, Viper 3, Viper 4, Viper 5. And at the top, bold scented, Viper 0, Elena Cross. A hush fell over the room, the kind that isn't silence but reverence. I stepped forward. The light from the stained glass ceiling cast soft gold over the brass. My reflection stared back at me, fractured by the letters that finally carved me into history. For 15 years, I was the ghost in every mission, briefed the footnote that never got printed. And now, here I was, not decoration, not an apology, just the truth. As the audience clapped a slow, uncertain sound, as if unsure whether this was a ceremony or a confession, I caught sight of a small figure moving toward me. A teenage girl in ROTC uniform. Hair is tightly braided, shoes shining. Her hands trembled as she extended an envelope. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "I wasn't supposed to approach you. But this is for you." I opened it later alone, sitting in my car under a dying maple tree. The letter was written in blue ink, looped with care, Commander Cross. "I watched your hearing. I showed it to my mom." She cried. "I've always felt like I didn't belong in uniform. I'm quiet, I don't like shouting orders. But now I know leadership isn't always loud. Sometimes it's silent and brutal and brave. I want to be the kind of soldier you were. Thank you for existing even when they tried to erase you." Cadet, Lou, ROTC, class of 2028. Tears didn't fall, not because I wasn't moved, but because something deeper rose up, peace maybe, or something older, worth. I folded the letter like it was a map back to myself. Later that night I returned to the plaque. The hall was empty now, echoes only. I ran my fingers over the brass. Viper Zero. No one would know what it meant unless they'd lived it. And that was fine because I hadn't come back to explain myself. I'd come back to prove I was never gone. A week later I found myself in front of a door I hadn't opened in 15 years. The dining room, the place where voices used to rise and collide like waves against porcelain plates, where I once recited spelling words with mashed potatoes stuck to my cheek. Tonight there was no fanfare, just 4 chairs, 4 plates. One empty space pulled out for me, not the garage, not the corner, a seat full, unapologetic at the table. I hesitated before taking it, not out of pride, out of disbelief. The clink of silverware filled the silence at first. Chicken still overcooked the way Mom always made it. The green beans are too soggy. But there was butter. There was warmth. Claire passed me the bread basket, our fingers brushing. She didn't recoil, neither did I. It was quiet, but it wasn't cold. Then Dad spoke, not looking at me, just pushing peas across his plate. They updated the registry, he said. Storm vows listed now. Name, date, casualties. I nodded, saw it. Another beat. Your name's there too. It should be, I said. It always should have been. No argument followed, no tension flared, just a quiet acknowledgement, like a storm that had passed and left the earth damp but intact. Mom poured more water, then reached hesitantly slowly for my hand. Her fingers, once so firm with discipline, now trembled ever so slightly. She didn't speak, just rested her palm against mine. I let her. That small contact did what no ceremony, no salute, no medal ever had. It let me exhale. Not from duty, from absence. She cleared her throat, voice dry. If you're ready, we'd like to hear about Syria, if you can. The silence that followed wasn't demanding, it was sacred. I looked up, 3 sets of eyes, not pressuring, not prying, just willing to stay, to hold space. I told them what I could, the checkpoint, the heat, the names I still whispered in sleep. I spoke of the 12 days without saying 12 days, of dirt turned to graves, of victory so silent it almost didn't exist. I didn't cry, neither did they. But the air thickened as if our breath wove threads between us that hadn't existed before. Claire spoke next. You led them, she said. You brought them home. I nodded. Not all of them. But enough, she whispered, more than anyone else could have. And there, for the first time, I saw her not as the golden child, the uniformed heir, but as a sister, not in rank, in blood, in bond. She didn't look away when I said I thought you hated me. I didn't, she said. I just didn't know how to see you when no one told me how. Her honesty stung more than any insult ever had, but it also healed because she wasn't defending herself. She was reaching, and I was ready to meet her halfway. Dad coughed softly. I used to polish my medals before dinner. You remember that I did? Of course I did. One night, he continued, you asked why I never polished yours. He looked up, eyes glinting. I didn't know then. I didn't understand. You weren't supposed to, I said. That was the deal. No name, no face, no pride. That was their rule, he replied, not ours. Mom squeezed my hand once more. We missed you every Sunday. Every chair felt too balanced without you. My throat tightened. You never said anything. We didn't know how, she admitted, but we're trying now. That's when I saw it. Not in their words, in the way they waited. Not to respond, to receive, to hold what I gave them without reshaping it. That night we didn't toast, we didn't take pictures, we just stayed. The chair at the end of the table, mine, remained pulled out even after I left to help with the dishes. And when I walked past the hall where my room used to be, I saw something new, a folded blanket, a nameplate. My name, resting gently on a shelf. They hadn't said they were sorry with words, but they said it with that, with placement, with presence. After dessert, Claire handed me a letter. It came to my base, addressed to Viper Zero, care of Lieutenant Claire Cross. I opened it slowly. Inside, a handwritten note from a cadet I'd never met. I'm training for ROTC. I read about Storm Vow. I want to lead like you. I want to be brave in silence, too. My hands trembled, not from pain, from purpose. I folded the letter, slipped it into my pocket. Maybe this is what legacy looks like, not statues or street names, but letters passed quietly between generations, and chairs pulled out after years of being folded away. That night, as I stood at the doorway ready to leave, Mom asked, "Will you come again next Sunday?" I looked at her, then at the table, then at the chair with my name on it. "Yes," I said, "I think I will," and somehow that quiet promise to return to belong felt more courageous than anything I'd ever done under fire. But the war I had to finish now wasn't fought in deserts or shadows. It was here, in light. 3 weeks later, I stood behind a podium beneath the vaulted ceiling of the U.S. Military Women's Leadership Conference. The seal of the Department of Defense gleamed behind me. My name, Commander Eleanor Cross, flashed on the projector screen, not hidden, not redacted, there, fully. My uniform fits differently now, not tighter or looser, truer. The medals felt earned, not hidden. But what weighed more was the silence in the room. A reverent quiet, not because of who I was, but because of what I'd carried, what so many had. I adjusted the mic, looked out at rows of young women in uniform, ROTC cadets, officers, veterans, eyes sharp, shoulders squared, some curious, others haunted, all watching, waiting. I took a breath. There are stories we're told to forget, battles that never made the news, names erased so cleanly they were never whispered again. I come from one of those stories. I paused. But here's what I need you to know. Don't mistake silence for failure. Don't mistake erasure for absence. Some of the greatest victories are the ones no one ever claps for. A ripple moved through the crowd. I saw heads nod, jaws tighten. I continued. Storm Vow wasn't just a mission, it was a promise. That we could lead, win, survive even if no one ever put it in a book. I pulled out a photo, the same grainy still from my testimony. I held it up. This is proof of grit, of loss, of women who didn't wait for permission to matter. I let that settle, then looked directly into the rows. But this, I tapped the mic. This is the part they never trained us for. Coming back, being seen, claiming space without apology. My voice didn't waver, it carried. You don't have to fight the same war to carry the same weight. You don't have to vanish to be brave. But if you ever do, if the world ever tells you to shrink, to silence yourself, to disappear, remember this. Even ghosts cast shadows. Even erased names leave imprints. And then I said the words I'd never thought I'd say in public, words I'd carried like contraband in my chest. I am Viper Zero, and I'm done hiding. Applause didn't come in a roar, it started with one, then another. Then the room stood, not in spectacles, in recognition, in respect. As the clapping faded, I turned to leave the stage. That's when I saw her. In the third row, hair pulled back. Her hands gripped the edge of her notebook, a second lieutenant's bar on her collar. She looked maybe 21, eyes locked on mine. Not with awe, with understanding. The same look I must have had at 17 watching someone speak truth in a language I hadn't known I needed. She didn't say anything. Just stood alone straight. Her chin lifted just enough. And in her silence, I heard the echo of everything I had hoped this moment would carry. Not legacy, not glory, just light passed from one flame to the next. I stepped off stage. Claire met me in the hallway. She'd flown in that morning, wore civilian clothes, but her stance hadn't softened. You made them listen, she said. You made them see. I nodded. That wasn't the mission, I replied. It was the reward. And now she asked, "What's next?" I smiled. Not the practiced kind. The kind that comes when you finally put something down after carrying it too long. Now, I said, I teach others how not to disappear. Outside, the wind had picked up. Cherry blossoms late for the season fluttered down like soft debris. I watched a group of cadets cross the lawn laughing bright, not because the world had changed, but because someone had told them they deserved to take up space in it. That someone was me. That finally was enough. Maybe you felt like Elena too, like you've lived, you've tried, you've given your all, and yet, somehow, you still go unseen. If that's you hear this, your worth isn't measured by applause or medals. It's in the strength you hold when no one's watching, in the kindness you give even when no one thanks you. And if today you're still standing despite the silence, know this: you are not alone. I see you, and one day, others will too. And as this story quietly slips away into the shadows of your mind, dissolving into the silent spaces where memory and mystery entwine, understand that this was never just a story. It was an awakening, a raw pulse of human truth wrapped in whispered secrets and veiled emotions, every word a shard of fractured reality, every sentence a bridge between worlds seen and unseen, between the light of revelation and the dark abyss of what remains unsaid. It is here, in this liminal space, that stories breathe their most potent magic, stirring the deepest chambers of your soul, provoking the unspoken fears, the buried desires, and the fragile hopes that cling to your heart like fragile embers. This is the power of these tales. These digital confessions whispered into the void, where anonymity becomes the mask for truth, and every viewer becomes the keeper of secrets, too heavy to carry alone. And now, that secret, that trembling echo of someone else's reality, becomes part of your own shadowed narrative, intertwining with your thoughts, awakening that undeniable curiosity, the insatiable hunger to know what lies beyond, what stories have yet to be told, what mysteries hover just out of reach, waiting for you to uncover them. So hold on to this feeling, this electric thread of wonder and unease, for it is what connects us all across the vast, unseen web of human experience. And if your heart races, if your mind lingers on the what-ifs and the maybes, then you know the story has done its work. Its magic has woven itself into the fabric of your being. So before you step away from this realm, remember this: every story you encounter here is a whispered invitation to look deeper, to listen harder, to embrace the darkness and the light alike. And if you found yourself lost, found yourself changed even slightly, then honor this connection by keeping the flame alive. Like this video if the story haunted you. Subscribe to join the fellowship of seekers who chase the unseen truths, and ring the bell to be the first to greet the next confession, the next shadow, the next revelation waiting to rise from the depths. Because here, we don't merely tell stories, we summon them. We become vessels for the forgotten, the hidden, and the unspoken. And you, dear listener, have become part of this sacred ritual. So until the next tale finds you in the quiet hours, keep your senses sharp, your heart open, and never stop chasing the whispers in the silence. Thanks for watching. Take care. Good luck.
After listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind, or maybe it has brought back some old memories. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories, and they connect all of us. Everyone has their own unique journey in life, and we all try to understand the world in our own way. These kinds of moments remind us that we are all human, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, and always learning something new. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it with your friends. Your thoughts and feedback are always valuable to us, as they motivate us to create even better content. Every story has its own unique angle, and our goal is to understand everyone's perspective and make our content diverse and relatable. Stories like these help us realize that life's journey is different for everyone, and by hearing other stories, we learn something new. You can also share your own stories with us. Your experiences are valuable to us as well, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave your feedback. We aim to create content that brightens your mind and gives you new ideas every time. If you've already seen this video before, your feedback is still important. With every piece of feedback, we can improve our content and bring a new perspective to our viewers. Today, what we saw was just a small part of the many stories shared on Reddit and across the world. It's a reminder of how we all try to understand life by sharing our experiences with each other. This video was only an example of how we try to connect with others through storytelling, learning about different sides of life. We hope to continue sharing such stories that help us all learn and grow together. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon. If you haven't already, please like and follow for more amazing content. Your support keeps us going, and we will strive to bring you more thought-provoking and heartwarming stories. Until next time, take care and stay curious.